My name's Jacqui Griffin. I'm the Principal of Family Law Assist, and tonight this is part of the Wednesday chats on from 7:30 p.m. Sydney time. Tonight I'm going to be chatting with Cheryl Duffy, who is a divorce coach and mediator. And welcome, Cheryl. And I won't go too much into there you are. Well, I won't go too much into your background. I'll let you introduce yourself and your qualifications. And as I said, welcome. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and what you're going to talk about tonight.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Cheryl Duffy. I'm a certified divorce coach, accredited mediator, and an author. So basically, I'm here to talk about what a divorce coach does, when to engage them, and what types of challenges I see people have. So I do have 3 questions that I put to Jacqui for me to go through tonight, so that we can work through those questions. And then obviously, if you guys have some questions, you can put them into the chat, and then we can open it up for questions there. So if you're ready, we can start with question 1. Okay, I think Jacqui's. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first question then that was tabled. So it was, what do I see as the biggest challenges that couples have going through their separation? Well, I'd have to say one of the biggest challenges is the emotional roller coaster that they're embarking on, because they're both in 2 ends of the spectrum, so to speak, on how they're dealing with the separation. They're going to be someone who has made that decision that they're going to leave. They've got to the situation where they've accepted that the relationship is over, and they just want to get on and get that all of the process done and dusted so they can move on fast, and they want the process to go quite quickly. Whereas the person that's been left can feel, quite shocked and in denial and thinking, oh, surely we can work this out and hope for some reconciliation. So they can be seen to be quite resistant to the separation process. So they can come across as being sort of uncooperative or inflexible or unable to negotiate to come to some forms of agreement. So they really want the process slowed down because they feel so bombarded with all of these issues because so much of their life has been impacted. So they could be feeling, oh my gosh, I'm losing my partner, I'm losing time with my kids. I could be losing time, like losing the house. It could be impacting my work because there's so much chaos at home that at work I struggle to focus to meet deadlines that my boss is putting on me. So it impacts a lot of things in your life. Financial instability can occur. There's just lots and lots of things. There's, the mutual friends, extended family. So it just can make you feel as though your whole world has been turned upside down. So it's really about working with couples to try to get them to be future focused. And when there is one that is still really struggling emotionally, it's really hard then to get them to unite with the other party to be able to focus on what's best for the children and, be able to get them to not be just feeling and thinking about what's happening to them, but also about what they need to do to help the family transition and adjust to the new family structure. Now, another big challenge that I see out there is that there's people who are really struggling to separate how they feel about the breakup from their co-parenting responsibilities. So they're so full of pain and hurt, and they're really struggling to be able to look at what's needed to be a role model, what they need to do to put the children first, because they're still having this feelings of pain that they're enduring with the separation. So this can produce things like really hating their ex, not wanting to talk to them, not wanting to cooperate, not wanting to, they may want to even punish them for leaving. There's lots of different things that is all part of this emotional turmoil. So it's about them being able to separate how they feel about the separation from separating how they need to focus on the co-parenting responsibilities. So it's getting them to shift that mindset. So the problem is, if the one that is really struggling continues to sort of be in this mode of all these negative things are happening to me, it's very, very hard for them to be able to look at the positives in life and also to look for opportunities, which is about seeing those opportunities to create a good co-parenting relationship and seeing how they can help the children and the family shift to that new family structure once again. So another challenge is, that reduced time with the kids. Obviously, we're also used to having our kids full time, that it really is a very, very difficult adjustment to move towards having the children on a part-time basis. So it's really difficult for people to accept that they're not going to be able to see the kids every single day. So that's a huge adjustment that people are going through, and that's a big challenge for them. Then there's obviously the financial stress and instability that people have. There may be a reduction of income coming into the home. You may have had 2 incomes coming in. Now your ex is gone, there may not be that income coming in. There's basically the loss of the home that has to be sold possibly. So there's all that, how am I going to survive going forward? How do I get that stability financially? So there's a lot of financial stress. We all know that the cost of living right now is really, really difficult to endure. And then added on to that are the legal costs, which we know are really, really expensive. So it's all about all of these things that are bombarding the couple before they even start negotiating. They've got all these challenges to look through. So they're the basic challenges that I do see for people out there. And obviously that then has those ongoing impacts for being able to work together, to be able to get to those agreements in place. And obviously, they're going through that temporary phase of first separating to getting their consent orders and the agreements in place. There's a lot of turmoil and instability that's happening because they're trying to survive until those things are solidified. So it's really difficult for them. So then you might ask yourself, well, how can a divorce coach help? So, a divorce coach is someone who helps couples impacted by separation and divorce to help them be able to prepare and plan for their separation journey. And there's different phases that people come to a divorce coach for. So I get clients who are thinking, oh, should I stay or should I go? So they haven't even had the discussion yet with their ex. So they will talk through whether they're making the right decision. And obviously as a coach, we're not giving solutions to them. We're helping them uncover what is happening for them. And so they can then identify what they want for the future. And it's also important to understand whether there's external factors that are impacting them, which is going to then be a consideration. Whether are those problems just going to follow you when you, if you do leave, or is it something to do with the relationship that is really not working, that you either want to try counselling or whether you've made your decision and you want to leave. Because a lot of times when someone leaves a relationship or is thinking of leaving, they've been going through that grief process already. So they've been trying to make it work. They've been thinking, oh, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've just got to the end of my tether where I feel that my own mental health is being impacted. So therefore they want to then make that exit to be able to create a new life for themselves. So they've accepted that they don't want to be in that relationship. So a divorce coach provides emotional support, and they provide that support to couples together and individuals. So I do individual sessions with couples as well as having the joint sessions as well. So it's always important to be able to help them through that process. So because a lot of people can be so overwhelmed with what's going on in their life during this separation, it's about stopping the overwhelm, about them feeling so consumed with where do I go, who do I turn to, and what do I have to do next? So it's about identifying their top 3 challenges and those priorities that need to be focused on now. So at least it empowers them, have some form of control, focus on creating a plan of action of what needs to be done. So when working with the clients, it's about helping them prepare as well and plan for the separation. So identifying all those actions, and part of those actions is obviously getting their legal advice, because obviously a divorce coach is only there to help them through the divorce, particularly with the emotional support and what they want their future to look like, and help them. It's a bit like almost project managing their divorce for them, in being able to sort of say, okay, what's your priorities? When do you want things to happen? What are the actions that need to take place to get through that challenge, and look at the different risks and look at what they need to think of and put mitigation strategies in place. So it's even talking to them about difficult conversations that they're going to have. So they may, as I said, they may have come to me prior to making that decision. And so they want to talk through how they go about talking to their ex about getting divorced, wanting to separate. They also may want to talk about, how do I tell the kids? So it's all about working with them about how they're going to do that in a calm environment. What's the right time? Obviously, it's no good telling kids at the end of a day just before dinner if they're starving, or doing it on a day when they're going out somewhere fun, and you're telling them just before they go out. It's just going to ruin their day, because you have to remember, this day when they're being told that their parents are getting a divorce, they're going to remember for the rest of their lives where they were and what was said on that very day. So it really needs to be planned to be able to have that conversation as sensitively as possible, and making sure that you're both united in being able to talk to the kids about it, and making sure that they know that they're still loved by both parents, and that they'll still have good relationships with both parents going forward. Because you've got to remember that, the kids feel that you are both the most important people in their life. So they really look to you to be the problem solvers when the family's in crisis. So it's really about looking at how you're going to get through that crisis and help your children, and helping your family get to that new structure, as I mentioned before, to have those 2 loving homes that the kids are going to be able to go in between. So a divorce coach is basically someone that will then direct you to the right resource at the right time. What I find is a lot of people feel, a lawyer, I've got to go and see a lawyer straight away. My husband or my wife's just walked out the door. Oh, I've really got to go and see a lawyer. That's where I should start. That isn't the place where you should start. Because for one thing, you don't want to be sitting in a lawyer's office spilling out all of your grief and emotions when the meter's running at over $500 per hour. Nothing against lawyers, but I just feel that we need to make sure that we go and see the right professional at the right time. So it's really important to be able to have that preparation and planning of collating all of your chronological life events, all of your family wealth pool, getting all of that information together, and having the list of questions that you want to be able to ask the lawyer, so that you maximize the time that you're in that lawyer's office. Now, I always recommend to my clients to pay for a consultation. Don't go for the 15-minute free or the half an hour free, because you're not going to get as much information as you need to use that as your basis for going into forms of negotiation. So you want to be able to ask the lawyers for the range of what to expect, and not to sort of pin your hopes on that's the exact thing you're going to get. if your lawyer says, oh yeah, you could get around 60%, there's so many people that say, well, my lawyer said I can get 60%, and they don't shift from that. So then when they get into mediation, it's really, really difficult, because there's one that's saying, okay, well, my lawyer said I can get 60%, and the other one's saying, well, my lawyer said I can get 50%, like it should be 50-50, and then the battle is on. So it's about being able to look at, you know, the best case, worst case scenarios, and trying to be able to understand that it is an actual sort of stake in the ground of a starting point of negotiation. So it's not going to be where you're going to end up. It's basically working out between you what's going to work for you both going forward. So it's really about sending them off to the lawyer when it's the right time, as I mentioned, and then they will then try to work through together to come to an agreement. But if they can't do that, they can then do the mediation, and then at least have their voice heard, be able to talk about things without being interrupted. They have an opportunity to have their points of view put across, and what their needs and wants are, and so forth. But other resources that they then get referred to are counsellors or psychologists, so that if they're really struggling to be able to be future focused, ready for change, you know, you can only coach people when they're ready to change. So it's really important that they have the right resources to work with and help them with their healing. So there's people that do need to go and see a psychologist to help them. A lot of cases, there can be triggers that have occurred through going through separation. Childhood traumas can be triggered, of abandonment and rejection and so forth. So it's really important that divorce coaches don't try to be the therapist, but they are there to help them and guide them to who they need to go and see as their next point of call as they go along the separation journey. So when they go through the mediation, and if they do get to agreement, that's all well and good, then they're able to then have their legal team or someone who can consent their order, create their consent orders or property orders and have them sent off. But if they don't agree, come to an agreement, they can try to come back to mediation once again if they need to go out and get more information. But if they come back to mediation, all well and good, they can try once again, or they can then have their 60I certificate to go to court. So it's really important to be able to see that there is a roadmap of being able to go through the separation journey and help them along that journey to see the right resource at the right time. And it will save them money and accelerate their healing, because if they're not seeing the right people at the right time, then if they're trying to get through the whole separation and divorce without seeing a psychologist or someone, a financial person, or someone that's going to help them in a component of the separation, then they're having those gaps that again have to be filled later on. So it's really important to help them through that roadmap. So I also help people who are going through separation, but I also help people who are post-divorce and they're really struggling to let go and move on. So I help them in the fact that they could be stuck as I was. So it took me 6 years to get to the point where I went and saw a psychologist, and then 2 years to transform myself and my life. So the 5 big mistakes that I articulate to my clients to try to avoid, because they do delay your recovery, and that is self-sabotage. So for me, it was chocolate. So chocolate became my best friend. So there are other self-sabotaging that can occur, like alcohol, drugs, gambling, or even playing video games constantly, because it's just an escape from the reality of your life. But it's really, really destructive and doesn't help you process the pain and hurt and help you heal. So you're just delaying the inevitable. Then the other mistake that I made was resentment. So I held a lot of resentment, which made me very bitter. So it's like you taking the poison pill, hoping the other person's going to die. But in fact, it's you that's dying inside bit by bit every day. So it's really important to be able to make sure that you're trying to accept that the relationship is over and that it isn't something to do with anything about yourself and your self-worth, that it is part of life, that sometimes relationships just don't work out. And it's about making sure that you process that and move through to the other side. But it is very, very difficult, of course. So the other mistake I made was having that half glass empty attitude. So, you know, everything I could see was negative. So I couldn't see any of the positives in life. So it was not enabling the opportunities to be seen, to be able to progress my healing or my life. So you sort of get stuck in this post-divorce purgatory, so to speak. So it's really important to help the clients shift from a negative mindset to a positive mindset. So an analogy that I use with them is, you know, I have clients who say, yeah, but I've had to move from a great big family home, 4-bedroom, it was so beautiful, and now I've had to move to a 2-bedroom unit. And so, yes, it's a big adjustment to have to give up a family home that you've worked hard for, but then you have to start looking at the positives. What are the positives out of that negative? So, you know, it's less to clean. It could be more secure because it's got security comms to get in. You know, gives you an opportunity to get rid of some old furniture, trinkets that are triggers that remind you of your ex. There's such a big list of positives that could come out of starting afresh. So it's really important to try and look for those positives in a negative situation. Then scared of getting hurt again. So it's about locking yourself away, isolating yourself, in not being able to get back out there because you're feeling very guarded that you don't want to get hurt again. So that's something else that is a real big mistake that people make. And then the final one was staying in your old life. Well, I brought my ex out of the family home, so I stayed in the house because I didn't want too much change for the kids. And then I stayed at my workplace where my ex worked. And so there you have I'm living in my old life, but my ex wasn't in it. So it's just a case of you still living this empty life and not being able to let go and move on, because there's constant reminders all around you of, you know, you being in your old life. So I'm a big advocate for having a fresh start. I don't say that people have to do that, but I just sort of promote that does help you be able to let go and move on. So, you know, my divorce was 15 years ago. So subsequent breakups, I've moved house to somewhere where I've really wanted to always live and things like that. And I find it really helps, you know, clean the slate, start afresh, and let's move forward. So I try to help the clients be able to be future focused, be able to think of their relationship with their ex as a business relationship, and try to cut that emotional connection, as in you're always going to be parents, but you're no longer partners. So you want to be able to make sure that you have this sort of business relationship where you treat the kids as though they're your business. And let's face it, every business owner wants their business to be a success. So what we want to do is have that successful co-parenting relationship so our kids end up thriving in 2 family homes. So it's all about making sure that we're moving couples through right from the beginning, before all of the conflict and the that adversarial pitting against each other for a winner and a loser. We want to be able to get people at the onset of separation to help and give them support to guide them through, particularly that emotional support. So then we have mediation and looking at the third question of the third challenge of difficulty negotiating in mediation for parenting and property. So what I find is that people that come to mediation who are still carrying that emotional trauma and hurt find it so hard to separate how they're feeling about that pain and that breakup, and still having that unfinished business which consumes them. They keep looking over their shoulder to the past and keep trying to think about how it could have been prevented. Can't we reconcile, go back and try and make it work? So they're not in the right mindset sometimes when they do come to mediation. So it's about helping them to be able to move and shift that mindset to help the children, and making sure that they're working towards a new family structure. And even if that's helping them to just do small steps of, getting a few things put in place, may not be the whole gambit of what needs to be set up and changed, but it could be just a small thing. It could be, okay, so what are we going to do? Christmas holidays are coming up, instead of going into, oh, this is how the co-parenting is going to be for the rest of our child's youth, how about just focusing on what's going to happen at Christmas and what's going to happen in the school holidays? So doing it in bite-sized chunks can sometimes be more palatable for people who are really resisting and struggling to get through the mediation. There's also they're obviously resistant to change. So when they are really struggling, they don't want the status quo to change. So it's about having that resistance versus negotiating the future. If you're resisting change, it's very, very hard to get people to negotiate the future. So it's about getting them to understand that, they're trying to push the waves back at the ocean, the beach, which is impossible. This separation is going to go ahead, but you're needing to go with the flow, and you can do it at a certain pace, as I mentioned, with small manageable chunks, as opposed to trying to tackle everything head on and trying to do everything when you're not ready for it. So it's about helping them through that emotional journey. And then, helping people setting up that temporary environment before they get the consent orders or the agreements in place. There's a lot of couples that will sort of, okay, that's it, I'm gone. And then everything's left in a mess. The finances, the mortgage isn't being paid, or the rent's not being paid. It's really important to articulate to people at the onset of separation, there is that temporary phase where it's almost going to be like a status quo until things are getting finalized. And the worst thing that people can do is go out there and start a new relationship, because that just throws petrol on the fire. So then, that all blows up, and then it's very hard to negotiate with someone who feels, hey, we're still married and you're out there looking for someone else. So you want to be able to try and walk alongside each other. Think of them as like you're walking alongside the tiger and you're just stroking it, don't prod it, so you get your eyes scratched out. You want to be able to make sure that you're working alongside together and stay calm. The worst thing you can do is lose your cool, because the more you aggravate each other or start becoming defensive or aggressive, it really just goes really, really south from there. So it's all about trying to manage your emotions in being able to make sure that you're trying to do this as amicably as possible to get to the other side. Once you've got all of the consent orders in place and the divorce done, then yes, it's time to be able to start afresh and do what you like. But it's all about trying to manage this fragile time for both of you to help the family transition to out through the other side of this separation journey. So those are the three questions that I had. I think I need to put a light on. It's getting a bit dark. So does anyone have some questions that they want to ask in the chat? So what happens when you've been separated due to domestic violence? There are no parenting orders due to other party refusing to mediate for a 15-year-old, and the 15-year-old is with his father, and I don't see him much. This occurred November 2021. So it's about going, if there's domestic violence in place, it's about going through the channels of going through legal aid, or if you're not eligible for legal aid, trying to go through the legal process in being able to have mediation instigated, because it's a prerequisite for going to court, and being able to go through that. And it's about having the mediation and looking at having the opportunity. If you think your 15-year-old is really wanting to spend time with you as well, and you know, you think that it'd be beneficial to have child inclusive mediation, you're able to get the voice of the child into that mediation so that you can then work together on trying to put the interests of the child in having a meaningful relationship with both parents. So unfortunately, you need to go through that legal process if the other party is not willing to go to mediation voluntarily. With the self-representation, this might be better answered by Jacqui, because she's a lawyer. So basically, I direct people to a lawyer to get their legal advice, but then it's up to people whether they're going to use a lawyer or whether they are going to go through the process themselves and be able to, you know, go through and organise mediation and get that Section 60I if they do need to go to court. But Jacqui, do you know what judges might feel about people self-representing? Is there any pros and cons to that?
Yeah, look, can I just say this, that up to about 30% of people in family court are self-representing, so it's not something that judges, it's not an unusual occurrence for judges. The judges, from my experience, with people who are self-representing, if say one party is represented, such as myself, represented by myself, for example, they will assist the self-represented litigant and explain things in a lot more detail than if they into the process. So that is one of the roles of the judges, is to assist self-represented litigants, not to give advice, legal advice, but to assist with the process. So when you say what their view is, their view is that they're there to assist them with the process. I mean, there's no adverse inference about self-representing, because, as I said, about up to 30% at different times, people are self-representing.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Jacqui. Okay, has anybody else got any other questions?
I've got a question. How much does this divorce coaching cost?
So a divorce coach can be between $180 and $250 an hour.
Okay, and
$180.
Yeah. So how long do people generally? I mean, I'm sure there's a scope, but what's the kind of scope that would be for this sort of representation? Would people use 2 hours, or do they go on for years using you once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, or just when things are happening at court? So what kind of pattern of usage do people have?
It's basically what they feel they need. So generally, I will have a couple of individual sessions with each individual and a couple of joint sessions. Then they go on to seeing their lawyers. Then they go on to doing, I always recommend they do a parenting after separation course, then go and see their lawyer, and then get their entitlements, then do their mediation, and it goes on from there. Usually once they go off to mediation and they do their agreement, I don't then need to see them anymore, and they don't need me. So it's all about if they need me. So I've had people that have had sessions with me as and when they need me throughout the journey, or they'll have me just the first part till they get to having their consent orders done, or there's people, as I mentioned, who are really struggling post-divorce to create a new life for themselves. So then I'm helping them build a new future.
Okay, so would that mean, like you said, a couple of sessions individually, then a couple of sessions by joint? Does that mean like what, 1, 2, 3, 4? We're talking about 5 hours of your time, say, you know, somewhere between $1,000, a bit over $1,000, or what kind of, would that be at the time frame? The time amount that you might?
It's at least 6 sessions, so 2 joint and 2 each of individual.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then doing the parenting after separation course, which is 165.
So sorry, is that 6 between the 2 people? So it's shared half each, or what? I'm trying to work out how many hours would one person have to pay for? So,
well, they're individual ones, so they have 2 individual.
And how long do they go for? An hour or 2?
Generally just an hour. But
okay, so that's
I have people who'll be, so if particularly ones that have had it happen to them, they want more time with me.
So I'm just trying to work out the minimum, if you don't mind. So say 2 hours there. I'm just trying to work out what would be the minimum amount of time that somebody would spend with you before consent orders, say, just to know the minimum, and then somewhere in the sort of more usual.
Is 4 sessions, 2 of them being joint. So they pay half of the 180 each, and 2 individuals, which is 180 each. So roughly whatever that is.
So that's 3 hours, basically. 3 hours of your time that they would pay for at the minimum. Okay.
The minimum, because I have others that come to me. We go through all of their, because they want to be able to think about what they're going to propose in mediation. So they'll basically want to go through and work through different options in a spreadsheet that they've pulled together. So I could review those with them and things like that. So it depends on what people are wanting. Some people are not confident to have that conversation with their kids. They feel, I don't want to stuff it up, so I want to sort of walk through it and role play it and all that kind of stuff. So it's very dependent on the individual.
The other question is, what's the difference, or do you move between 2 roles? Because you're a mediator as well. So what's the difference between a divorce coach and a mediator, or do you kind of swap hats in the middle of these sessions?
Well, they're 2 different roles, and so therefore 2 different hats that I wear. So I won't be a divorce coach in the mediation, and I won't be a mediator in the divorce coaching. So it's about divorce coaching is the preparation, the emotional support. The mediation is about, okay, you want to be able to talk about what's been going on for you. So you're letting the other party know and being able to work together on what options to negotiate an outcome. And that's in their court. I'm driving the process and reality testing it in private session, but I'm just making sure that they're the ones that are owning the outcome.
So would you start off with, say, divorce coaching, and then say you did the 3 sessions that we just talked about, and then would you then possibly become a mediator for the same couple? Or are they 2 that if you're a divorce coach, you don't become a mediator, or vice versa?
Because I'm doing joint sessions with the couple, if it's a couple that come to me, right, a lot of times there'll be clients who come to me as individuals and their ex doesn't come. So I'm just coaching that person. I can't do the mediation in those circumstances because it's a conflict of interest.
Okay.
But if I get the couple come to me, then I have joint sessions and individual sessions in coaching to do all the preparation of their separation journey, go and send them off, get their legal advice. Then with the mediation, that's where I'm their mediator, because it's not a conflict of interest because they both came to me in the first place.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, I'll just see if anybody else has asked more questions. Okay, there's one question that's just come up. What if the ex refuses to physically move away from the matrimonial home? I want to buy him out. He knows that even the kids are saying to him to go and rent a place because they're sick of the tension. I'm hesitant to go anywhere where he's around, and I don't want an IVO. Is that somebody, when somebody obviously that's the problem that they're looking at. What would you say if somebody sort of rang you up or said something like that to you? What would you be asking them to go get legal advice first about an IVO, or would you be saying, look, come and talk about as a divorce coach, or
come and talk about what's going on to understand why they're not wanting to move out, what's the emotional attachment, the emotional issue here of why they don't want to move out of the place, Why? I didn't really hear all of the question. I'm trying to find it on here.
Yeah, so it says, I don't want an IVO. I mean, this is sort of like, this is a question that I would answer as a lawyer on a regular basis. Because as I said, up to, but how would you approach it as a divorce coach?
So they're both living under the same roof as separated parents, and there's so much tension. The children are saying, oh, for God's sake, mum and dad, will you please at least leave? One of you leave. Is that what the question was? Yeah,
and basically the person who's asked the question saying they're afraid the other person's going to trash the place when they're not there or go through their belongings, but they don't want an IVO, which is like a family violence order in the local court. So they don't want that. So they're in a position where they're living under the same roof. Things are intolerable. I mean, I give advice, legal advice on what you can do on a regular basis, because this is, unfortunately, it's a familiar scenario that I deal with. But what would a divorce coach, how would you deal with
that? That would be coaching them to see how they can come to a workable solution of living under the same roof, trying to minimise the conflict, see what's causing the conflict, being able to work out if there's a possibility of, if they can't minimise that conflict, doing the parenting after separation course, being able to work through what are the key issues, see if there are resolutions that can be, workarounds that can happen. It might be simple things of, oh, you know, she's not doing my washing anymore, or he's not mowing the lawn anymore. We don't know what the issues are yet to constitute what's causing the amount of tension. It might be to do with household, or it might be to do with one is really struggling emotionally with the separation, and so they're finding it quite torturous being in the same household, but because of financial constraints they can't afford to go into two different homes. But that's where sometimes you can have nesting, where maybe the kids stay in the house and each parent goes out week by week. One goes and stays with some friends or family or whatever, or they can get a cheap one-bedroom rental or what have you. It's about working out how they can make it work until they can get the agreements in place, a permanent solution in place. So that would be through coaching. First of all, get them trying to work together so that they are being able to look towards the future.
Okay, well, thanks for that. There's one more question that said, can the court order a divorce coach, or make an order for a divorce coach?
No. They don't recognise the divorce coaches as part of a divorce sort of resource in the court system, so to speak. So it's not something that is well adopted in Australia. So there are quite a few of us, about probably 10 of us now, that are certified, that do the divorce coaching. There are some that are life coaches that dabble in the divorce arena, but if you want a certified divorce coach, then you need to have one that's got that certification and gets recertified every 2 years. So it's not something that the courts refer or order someone to go to a divorce coach.
Okay, because unlike parenting coordination, or are you a parenting coordinator as well? Because some of the mediators I'm finding are also doing parenting coordination.
Yeah, I will be in March.
Okay, yes, because I mean, my understanding is that whilst it's still fairly new in the court system, in my experience, is that they can make an order, but it has to be by consent, that both parties agree to have a parenting coordinator.
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
Well, I feel very passionate about we need to be doing preventative. I feel that there's too many that have to go through all this conflict and the adversarial battle for the winner and loser. I want to be able to get right at the beginning as a preventative measure of helping, providing that emotional support for couples to separate amicably with a minimal of conflict. I even want it to go as far back as, you know, where in schools can we start helping to, you know, getting it to a situation where we separate better into the future, as opposed to letting it have all this conflict and then we try to fix it. We need to really start at the time of separation.
Now, when you use the word separate, that are the new court, the federals, the new court that amalgamated in September last year, their slogan or motto is separate smarter, whereas you use the word separate better. So, the court system is actually wanting people to separate in a less adversarial manner, which is what happens if you end up in court a lot of the time. But
I say to clients,
sorry, we're cutting into each other. This one question that somebody's, just before we move on to that topic, somebody's just asked particularly about divorce coaches or parenting coordinators. What body registers or certifies divorce coaches? Somebody's asked.
So it's the CDC standards, Board of Standards that's in America. So divorce coaching is very big over there. So it's just over the past probably 3 years that people have started to get certified here in Australia. But it's something that has been seen as being needed to combat helping people right at the beginning, because no one knows how to separate. They haven't been through it before. So that emotional support's really needed at the beginning. And that's what a divorce coach is there to help them with. But can I just go back with the court thing? When you're sort of saying that courts are trying to help people separate smarter, I'm just seeing that too many people are going into the court system and, I'm telling clients, don't go to court just to be told to do a parenting after separation course or told to go to mediation. Get that done first. But then I'll still see that when they go to court, they're being resent to mediation. And then even when they do have consent orders, when those get, they're breached, they're then having to go back to court. They keep going in and out of court. There's nothing that is making those consent orders enforceable. It only seems to be for people who have the ability or capacity to keep going back to court to try to get them enforced. So we do need to look at how we can improve how those orders are committed to and enforced going forward. And that's not something we're going to fix right here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been going for nearly an hour, I think, or close to it. Is there any other? I'm just having a look to see if there's any other questions. I can't see any.
So there's one there. What do you do if the other party does not want to come to coaching? You can't do anything. All you can do is coach the one person. And some people might say, well, what's the point if the other person's not going to come? But you can coach someone to not buy into the drama, to know when you're being triggered by the other party, to be able to change how you respond to the other person can actually influence how they're behaving. Because if you don't buy into their drama, then you're basically not escalating that conflict. So, I have I have clients that come to the parenting after separation course and they'll be, oh, my ex keeps bombarding me all the time when I've got the kids. They're texting, all throughout the time I've got them, asking, what are the kids doing? How are they? Where have you been? And it's about setting boundaries. So that's where, you help people to set boundaries and say, just send one text only. The kids are fine. I'll get them to call you at 6 o'clock tonight. And that's it. Don't answer any more texts for that day. So it's all about trying to help people help themselves and not buy into this having to respond to copious amounts of texts and not having to ignore the text, which inflames the other party. So it's about working with them to find a way of setting boundaries and making sure that they're sort of setting out how they want it to be going forward to try to have a workable solution.
Okay, well, thanks, Cheryl. Look, I think I found it really invaluable because I don't actually know much about divorce coaching at all. And so, I've learned a fair bit myself tonight. And, you explain things really simply and matter-of-factly and very practically, I found. So thanks again for your time tonight. And if anybody's got some questions for anything about it, you could maybe put some questions at the bottom of the post or the Facebook post that I posted up with Cheryl's details, and we might try to answer some of them if there's any other outstanding questions.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, I'll sign off for now and let you finish your evening.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay,
Talk to you
bye.
soon. Okay, bye.